We're live. Hello, everybody. I'm here with John and CJ and Exit. It's ATACMS Day. John, I know you woke up today and you woke up and you saw the news. I want you to explain like the first 5 minutes of your day today.
I woke up at 7 a.m. I apologize, my audio is really bad. I'm driving in my car right now. I woke up at 7 a.m. to my alarm to study for an exam I have tomorrow. I wake up, I check my phone. It's like 7:05, so I've been up for 5 minutes. I open my Discord, my Signal, my DMs from everybody. I have messages from CJ. I have messages from so many people. My DMs are just filled with pictures of APAM submunitions from ATACMS, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? And then I look, and then there's this edited video. There's like an edit with music that
Yeah.
Brent made of the Russian air defenses at Berdyansk trying and failing to intercept the TACMS. And that was like the first 5 minutes of me waking up.
Yeah. Today was a day.
And so,
But I have a
yeah,
question.
first
Did you
it was mounted that TACMS poster on my wall. That was the first thing I did.
did you see the strike last night before you went to sleep?
I did not. I think it happened at for me, like local time for me, I think it was at like 1 a.m. I went to sleep at like 11:30,
I
so I
don't
was getting up early this morning.
I don't think it was that late. I don't think it was that
Well, I
late.
mean, for me, like adjusted for like, Central Time. It was like it happened an hour or two after I went to sleep,
Hmm.
I think.
I don't think so. I don't think so because
Just
I
people,
I
because I saw the videos when I woke up, and I woke up at 7, and like the videos were like 6 hours old, 5
yeah
or 6 hours old.
because I saw the strike last night and I mapped it and but I had no clue what the strike was because it wasn't this is not the first time random stuff has blown up in Berdyansk. So I just said, "Oh, something's blowing up there again." Like there have been storm shadow strikes. There's been like other stuff that I don't even know how to explain. There's just sometimes just things explode for no reason. So I had no clue what was going on. So I just kind of I put on I map explosions near Berdyansk. I quoted Berdyansk online, who said that the explosions were near the airport, and then I went to sleep. And then like 6 hours later, I woke up and then there's pictures of DACMs everywhere. Was, the more shocking thing to me personally was Luhansk also getting hit, which I've seen like almost nothing about. I don't know. Have you seen anything
I've
about
seen
Luhansk?
I've seen absolutely nothing other than the launch. I'm pretty sure there've been two videos of attackings being launched that are put out. I'm pretty sure they're different launches, or different sets of launches. The first one with three, I'm pretty sure that's Berdyansk, and the second one with two, I'm pretty sure that's Luhansk.
I don't even know
I don't
where
know.
in Luhansk got hit.
Yeah, there's two heliports near Luhansk City. I still don't know which one was struck. We haven't seen any images, any video, nothing on Telegram about which of the two, or if it was a third one that I'm not aware of that got struck. I just don't know.
I don't even know if Luhansk City is what got hit because I've only heard Luhansk Oblast because
I
I
think they said one of the official Ukrainian accounts, Ukrainian government accounts, tweeted out Luhansk Airport, I think, which makes me think it's one of those two, the
yeah
small little airports that are nearest to the city. There's one that's right outside of it, and there's one that's a couple miles south.
yeah I just kind of arbitrarily put a marker on my map. I have no clue where it got hit. As I follow a bunch of people in Luhansk Oblast, and one of them said it was Alkevsk that got hit, and another one said it definitely wasn't Alkevsk. It was Stakhanov or whatever the other city is, and they said it definitely wasn't Stakhanov. I'm like, what's going on?
Well, I don't think there's not. I don't think there's heliports near any of those cities. I think
I
it was
don't think so either.
explicitly a heliport in Luhansk, yeah, and they're all further to the rear to that than that.
Yeah, CJ, what do you think?
So I had a different experience, which was I woke up at 2 a.m. to prepare for this airborne operation, and everyone was fucking asleep except for me, which is not normally how it works out. And I was frantically trying to get information, and yeah, it's been a pretty glorious day ever since.
Yeah. So, so there. I'm trying not to doom. Okay, I'm not gonna go there. But what do you what do you think is the plan going forward with the ATACMS?
I think the plan is to really focus on things that just couldn't be ranged before. So mainly, these sort of heliports that were outside of the radius. I mean, we also heard some reports from numerous Russians, again, which we have to take with a giant grain of salt, that there was also GLSDBs used, and which wouldn't surprise me because they said they were ready to go very recently, and they would not surprise me if they tried to combine multiple different types of munitions together. So there may be definitely more at play, but I think, as we all know, helicopters are so important to both Russia's offense and defense, and they're one of the few things that Ukraine really doesn't have the ability to reach out and touch in terms of with their own aircraft. And so this levels that pretty greatly. And I know we could go into a deep discussion about how Russia might respond, but I think no matter what, it's going to take some time for them to figure it out.
I think well, the issue is we don't know how much time they have to figure it out. Like I guess in theory, Ukraine could launch another attack tonight. I don't think they will or can, but like in theory they could, or tomorrow or whenever. Like I don't know how long Russia has to adapt, which is weird. It makes me uncomfortable, honestly, because I don't want them to adapt. I want them to take as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible.
I think even though it might be a while till another strike, as you mentioned, Russia has to respond. It was the same thing with Storm Shadows. Even though Storm Shadows weren't hitting every single C2 or command post, Russia was forced to move everyone around, and that caused some command and control problems. Now, you could probably say they overcame it, but it maybe helped Ukraine with the counteroffensive more than they would have if they had not done the strikes. And I think that's kind of the important thing to look at is, why now? Is it because they finally got them, or is there something else going on? Are they trying to enable some more attacks? Are they trying to weaken the next round of Russian attacks before they start? I think that'll be the key thing is what is it tied to? Because you're right, if this is the status quo where Ukraine gets a handful of ATACMS every few weeks, then yeah, Russia could do a lot. But if they're getting pressure in other ways, then it might be more significant.
Yeah. So, what do you think? I always forget the letters. The bombs. What do you think those are going to be used on? The little, I can't remember the word.
Yeah, the ground launched
Yeah.
small diameter bomb. So, I mean, for better or worse, people have seen a lot of these in use very recently in Gaza. However, you'll note there that they're used, they're very precise, and they're very good for taking out buildings. Now, what does that got to do with ATACMS? Well, these things are also HIMARS launched. So, Ukraine doesn't have an unlimited amount. So when you start combining a bunch of long range artillery weapons that all use the same platform, there's some risk there. But at the same time, if they don't have many Gimlers or they're not doing other missions, then they're pretty free to do this. But they have a completely different, attack profile than ATACMS, because ATACMS, of course, is a big ass missile that fires very fast and very far, and the ground launched small diameter bomb, is a rocket that goes up to a certain height and glides in. So it provides a very different radar picture, and more importantly, a different effect overall. So it's one of those things where, yes, individually, Russia could probably, muster a good defense to each, but when you start accumulating these effects, it becomes almost untenable. So I think these I think the ground launch ones are going to stay at 150 kilometers. I don't know the exact range to Berdyansk that they shot from, of course, because who knows where they shot from. But interesting to note, really, about this is the ATACMS they got, and John will correct me, hopefully, are about the same range, which is not what really people predicted. People predicted that we wouldn't give Ukraine expired ones or older ones that were the lesser range, but here they are. And these rockets don't have a GPS backup. They don't have hard NDW. They don't have a lot of the things that what most of the current service members know and love about ATACMS. They're the oldest and, relatively speaking, the worst in terms of the chances of getting through. And yet they seem to do a pretty good job. So yes, Russia will respond, but I think also over time they might even get newer ones.
ATACMS. 150 kilometers is pretty far. You can hit pretty much everything from that, I think, except for like parts of Crimea. But everything else you can pretty much hit with 150 kilometers, because like, yeah, I mean, you have like 30 kilometers of rope to play with on you know what I mean. So that seems like a lot. I'm just kind of like drawing 150 kilometer circles right now, and
Well, we
they
do
cover
love
like
the
every
feature.
beat.
That is my favorite feature. But one important thing to note is if you're basically stacking up, long range artillery versus helicopters. Obviously, helicopters give you a lot more flexibility in a lot of ways because they can change what they're going after mid flight. They can respond arguably more quickly if they're in the area. But that's the thing when you mentioned sort of about the rope, the extra distance, like. These HIMARS can shoot right from the front or very far back, whereas the helicopters only can really fire around 10 kilometers from the front. So they have a very limited area where they could be effective or be relevant. And then also, too, the further away they're pushed from the front due to these strikes, the less time they have on station in a pretty substantial way, because these things, I think someone pointed out, they have about 450 kilometer range at most. But of course, you first consider that's two-way. So, about 200 kilometers each way. And then you consider, well, do you want them just to do a UE at the objective? No, they need at least 30 minutes there. That burns up fuel. These things don't really have much more of a range than 150 kilometers, unless, as we talked about, they're doing some very fancy, very complicated fuel operations, which, yes, they've shown that they can do. But I don't think they're doing them for every single helicopter. And they're going to have to if they want to still be just as effective.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen and even geolocated where they do the refueling and rearming of helicopters. The one that we saw where it was south of Bakhmut, it was near Andrivka. It was to the east of Andrivka, south of Bakhmut, and basically that the helicopters were trying to repel the attack on Andrivka. So it was actually pretty close to the front. It was only like maybe I can't remember exactly where, but it was like maybe 15 kilometers or so. It was like within artillery distance pretty easily, but obviously they were not getting shot at for whatever reason, and they decided to post the video to Russia Today, which was interesting. So, I don't know. John, do you want to say anything about ATACMS?
Sorry, I've got 15 minutes. I'm currently in the store getting food. The only thing John mentioned the report of quantities for AP and wall files and some different numbers.
Okay. Yeah, we do.
You don't hear me?
Yes, sort of.
Okay, it's not mentioned.
CJ. Okay. Well, okay, hear you now. Anyways, so long story short, we're just hoping that Ukraine gets more ATACMS to play with. We obviously we don't know the damage assessment so far. I think the rumor was they destroyed like 9 helicopters, but obviously we're going to need some sort of imagery or something to validate that. I'm sure we're going to get the imagery like as soon as possible. Like I don't even know. Like it might be out already. I don't even know. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. The weather might not be favorable because it's Ukraine is quote partly cloudy, and by partly they mean mostly. Uh, and by partly they also mean all the parts you want to look at are cloudy and all the rest is fine. So so yeah, I guess we'll find out. They say in Berdyansk the magazine at the airport apparently caught fire and exploded for several hours, which is always fun. So yeah. Erland, how you doing?
Kind of in a insomnia information loop. But yeah, I think John wanted to say that there were images of debris from both block 1 and 1A. So they got a mixture
No,
of
that's not what it said next. No, we only have
Yeah.
block 1 debris. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys understood what John wanted to say, but
No, I
I
didn't.
think
I think he said we only, and then I didn't hear the rest. All I heard was we only.
okay, yeah. Anyways, it's an expected but also surprising day, I guess. I saw the news in the morning. I couldn't really understand how I should react before I had to rush to a meeting. When the meeting was over, I spent my time trying to edit a video that I thought was going to be very funny and get some traction. So I made this video with the thunderstruck overlay. But I don't know if Twitter is broken or if it's just me and it's not funny. But no one reacted to the video.
Maybe it
Yeah.
just like automatically suppressed you for breaking copyright or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, I thought it was very fun and I enjoyed the result myself. So that's
There you go. So there is another piece of news that everybody is super interested in, and I.
Can I interest?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Can y'all hear me now? I'm out of the store.
Yes.
Yes. Now we can hear you, John. Go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. No, Erwin, no. We've only seen block 1 debris at Berdyansk, and I apologize. There's like 10,000 birds currently swarming over me. But yeah, there's only block 1 debris from 2 individual missiles recovered at Berdyansk. We haven't seen any debris or anything or any images whatsoever from Luhansk. The original reporting prior to today, obviously, was that Ukraine was going to receive block 1s, or excuse me, block 1As, the M39A1s, which have the 300 something submunitions, 300-kilometer range, GPS guidance, etc. The M39, the block 1, that has 165-kilometer range, 900 submunitions, and just INS and Earth navigation system guidance. Honestly, my gut instinct, and this is just conjecture on my part, I don't have any specific public evidence for it, is that they probably to block 1.
We lost John.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was saying, where did you lose me?
I don't know, like 20 seconds ago.
Oh, God damn it. What I was saying is, so the prior reporting was that they were going to get block 1A, which, or, M39A1, which has a 300-kilometer range, munitions,
INF guidance, INS GPS guidance, but the debris that we've seen thus far from Berdiansk was just Block 1, so the M39, the original ATACMS, with 165 kilometer range, 900 submunitions, and INF guidance.
Yeah. So
without any specific evidence would be that they got both, but again, we've only seen specific debris for the Block 1 thus far.
So, what do you make of it, of them getting the Block 1? Is it going through the older stock first? Is that like the goal? Or is this like, did they intentionally want to give a lesser weapon? Or is this like a test run?
I suspect very strongly it's a pilot run. So basically all U.S. security assistance, well, almost all U.S. security assistance items thus far, items that have been provided via U.S. security assistance, I should say, there's been a pilot program of some form with all of them. So first with HIMARS, there was a shipment of 4, limited number of Gimlers. That was a pilot run to see how the Ukrainians would do with it. With the M777s, there were a couple that were delivered without the digital fire control system that the U.S. uses, so not the M777A2s. That was a pilot run. The 31 Abrams, in my estimate, are probably a pilot run. We saw the initial consignment of Bradleys, then like 100 more get added after that. That was a pilot run. It just happens with basically everything. So, to varying extents. So, on the one hand, yeah, it is the oldest missiles that we have. Those that, I guess, as is, we have the least utility for, or give us the least utility. It does strike me as a little bit strange because there's an ongoing program that should just now be finishing, I think, in a month or so, to convert the original M39s to M57 E1s. So that replaces the 900 submunitions, the ATACMS, with a unitary warhead derived from Harpoon, regrains the motor, so they take it apart, scoop out all the propellant from the motor, cast in new propellant that refreshes it. The service life resets it from, however many years to 0 years, and then that, adds, it's 10 years until it's expired again. We could, in principle, do that with the 157 M39s that we have remaining, and then basically just give ourselves, turn those 157 into 157 M57 E1s. Personally, I think that's what I would have elected to do, and just given the Ukrainians all M39 A1s. Because at the end of the day, if we're really going to kind of draw deep into our inventory for them, it's going to be majority 39 A1s. Maybe they wanted to try this as a proof of concept. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the right approach. The right approach would have been to have given them a lump sum of 200 missiles and then tell them to go crazy with it, to minimize the amount of time that Russia has to adapt to this new operational circumstance, to, begin dispersing the likely targets for ATACMS, to begin redeploying S-300V batteries to defend their most critical assets against them. So if you're going into it with the expectation of a pilot program, I think this kind of makes sense. I challenge the sanity of the need for a pilot program to begin with, but I guess this maybe kind of makes sense if your prior assumption is that there has to be some sort of ramp up to this, or pilot project.
Yeah, and this I find it wildly infuriating, but that's another topic.
Yeah. I mean, so my understanding is based upon Russian telegrams, so grain of salt obviously, is that so the raid on Berdyansk, those ATACMS had to fly through the engagement zones of Buk M3, and Russian telegram is to be believed. What I'd be curious is if this was a proof of concept in terms of just the baseline INS's ability to be able to perform evasive maneuvers, because one of the things to consider is that M39A1 with the GPS guidance is probably more capable of performing aggressive, evasive maneuvers, just simply because you don't have to worry about that accumulating INS drift at not nearly as much. And so if you're performing these really aggressive maneuvers with the M39, that may translate to increased or decreased precision on target and increased circular error probable. That's not necessarily the case for the M39A1, so you can kind of do potentially a lot more funky and aggressive maneuvering in flight. So I'd be very interested if this was kind of a pilot project to kind of just evaluate at a certain baseline level ATACMS' minimum ability to penetrate Russian weapon engagement zones.
Yeah, that's interesting. Beyond the how much more capable is the other, the F39A1, beyond just what you just said? Is it like does it have better guidance beyond the GPS? I mean, like a better computer system or whatever.
Yeah, it's more modern overall. It's a couple years more modern. And I think the M39A1s, like as recently, I think it's 2016. I think even those that weren't part of the SLEP, the Service Life Extension program, to get upgraded to M57E1s. Actually, I'm not even sure if any M39s were upgraded. I think it was all M39. Excuse me. I think it was just all the original M39s. I don't think any of the A1s got slapped. But I'm pretty sure the A1, they were shooting software 7 years ago, potentially. So I'm not sure if that was the case for the M39s that didn't get converted to 7E1s. So they may have some range of flight profiles available to them. The main thing is, if you look at it, there's tables for this, is the actual effect on target of an M39, M39A1 is actually identical, or nearly identical, even though they have a very large difference in the amount of submunitions. As it turns out, the M39 was first introduced in the U.S. Army service. It didn't really, the INS system did not really meet the expected performance standards at all. It didn't do that great. However, what they determined is that it was still able to achieve just the desired effect on target, typically, just because of how many submunitions there were, 900 something. So with M39A1, when they took out 600 submunitions to decrease the payload mass to increase the range, and added the GPS guidance, as it turned out, the decrease in lethality that you get from removing all the submunitions was basically more or less exactly canceled out by the increase in precision you get from the GPS. So they have basically the same effect on target.
Interesting. And just to circle back on this, they fired like 5, right? Like 5 total attacks.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, 5.
Yeah, so people in the chat are arguing over the number, and they're saying like 9 hit Berdyansk. We don't have evidence of that. We saw 3 launch in one batch, and then 2 launch in another batch. So,
and there's 2 distinct boosters recovered from Berdyansk. As far my understanding is, it was 3 to Berdyansk and 2 to whatever heliport in Luhansk. That's my understanding.
Yeah, so we're not talking about like 10 or 11 missiles. We're talking about like 5.
WAPO, they were saying that I think they were getting gaslit by some Ukrainian official who was saying that, they launched 18 ATACMS in total tonight, and that's such astronomical BS.
Would you rather say that you launched 2? Or like 3? We launched 3 ATACMS and blew up both your bases. Get over it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't understand the point in lying about that, because the Russians know that they'll have their radar tracks on this. they'll have the debris. I mean, they'll know how many. I mean, that's the whole thing with M39A1 specifically. Is it's going to airburst and it's going to disperse all the submunitions, and the booster's just going to fall to the ground. It's not like a unibody missile in that sense. It's not like an M57 or like Tosca-U with a unitary warhead, where the body oftentimes gets destroyed in the blast because it's attached to the warhead when it impacts the ground and detonates. Like, the boosters are going to be literally all over the place. The Russians are going to be able to recover them and read the serial numbers and figure out how many were fired. That's not hard.
Yeah, like here's a picture of one. Here's a booster. I know you can't see it, but they can see it.
One fun thing I did want to mention, I was talking to Colby about this earlier. So, per the U.S. Army, this is based on looking at the serial numbers and the production dates on the 2 boosters from Berdyansk. There's one from 1996, so it's produced in 1996. It's labeled MGM 140A. That's a Block 1, obviously. But what's more interesting is there's another booster also labeled MGM 140A, which denotes Block 1 M39. But the production date on it was 0997, September 1997.
That's the
What's
one I'm
interesting
showing right
about
now.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that one is, per the reports that were released by the U.S. Army, I don't have them immediately on hand. I have the technicality for them. They published like the delivery schedule when they received all of the missiles. The last Block 1 was allegedly received in July of 1997, and the first Block 1A, the M39A1, was produced in August. So it's labeled as M39, but the manufacturing date corresponds to when it should be an M39A1. So I'm inclined to believe that there's just a clerical error in the Army delivery reports. I think that's the most likely explanation, but still nonetheless interesting, because that production date range is outside the known production range, the known production dates for the original M39.
Yep. Or maybe just something weird happens, Maybe it like failed some inspection and then they had to do something, and then
that could have been, or it could have been a spare. That was my other thought. It could have been a spare missile.
Who knows? You're gonna need to get like someone from the factory or something to clear that one up.
Listen, Lockheed will definitely have complete records. The Missile and Space Program Executive Office should, but yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, the 97 one is the one I have on screen right now. So that was convenient.
I guess that's what caused the confusion, but for the mix up that I made as well, that there was a mix between Block 1 and 1As. So I went for the date thing, and I guess the MGM 1 should it should speak for itself.
Yep.
The other thing I was going to say was, those are actually the one from 96. That's actually one of the older third of the Block 1s. So we're giving them the oldest of the old. Like there's like 100 of the 150 Block 1s that we have. There's at least 100 that are younger that we could have given them. So we're drawing from the 50 oldest and some of the newest, I guess, at the same time, which is interesting.
Maybe they just reached into the cupboard and took whatever fell out first.
Yeah, probably.
So it's all interesting. Is there are there any other ATACM related things any of you would like to talk about?
Oh, in the videos, it looks like they're using HIMARS, so I presume that whatever modifications were made to disable HIMARS, or disable ATACMS and HIMARS SDS fire control system, I assume either the Ukrainians figured out a workaround or the US just re-enabled that for them. So clearly, not an obstacle.
Yeah. no no permit. Yeah, because the ATACMS are banned in Europe, right?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't have an answer to. Is ATACMS well? Is the EFCS, the European Fire Control System, on the Mars 2, which is German M270, LRU French M270, or MLRS-1 Italian M270? Is ATACMS at all? Is any ATACMS variant compatible with EFCS? And if they are, is the M39 M39A1 specifically compatible with it? I don't know. Another relevant question is: are the UK's M270B1s, which have I think the exact same software as the M270A1s that the US Army uses, did we ship those with the software for ATACMS to launch those? That's another question I have that I don't have an answer to.
I have no idea how these missiles work, but it strikes me as weird that you could disable a missile based on the warhead when the missile seems the same, like the booster part.
Well, they have different electronic interfaces because, especially like if you're going to go in and try and select, like if you're trying to set fuses and stuff electronically, and that there's different ways that you can be able that's possible for you to be able to figure out what missiles actually loaded, in the fire control system. And also keep in mind that the mass of the missiles might not be identical. So, for example, take M30 Gimlers, which has the original M30, which has the DPICM submunitions in its warhead, versus, say, the M31, which is the unitary. Even though they have the same range, their masses, might be ever so slightly different. They just, there's enough performance margins that their effective published range is identical, even though there might be slight differences. In reality, obviously, that difference is going to have to be taken into account by the fire control system. So it might be able to exploit things like that to, effectively limit the munitions that you can fire, because you have to actually input that data accurately into the FCS, or you're not going to get, the missile's not going to go where you want it to go to necessarily.
Are you surprised Russia couldn't intercept any of the missiles?
Not really, unless there was an S-300V there, they have very little chance. So,
because it seemed that they were shooting at ghosts, like they had no chance.
So Buk has some ABM capability. It genuinely does. The Russians advertise that it's capable of defeating ATACMS. It's not, as far as I can tell, but it does have some ABM capability against like non-maneuvering ballistic threats, at least. Then Tor is a cool system. Like, don't get me wrong, but best of luck trying to shoot down a ballistic missile with Tor. I know they can shoot down Gimlers with Tor, but the ATACMS is a whole different ballgame.
John, do you know which altitude more or less the dispersion of the bomblets happen?
No idea. I haven't a clue.
Because all the video demonstrations I've seen, you can't really judge.
Yeah, that's not been published anywhere as far as I'm aware.
Because I'm guessing that would also interfere with the interception rate of something like a book.
Well, it depends on what altitude
Yeah.
So I'm really not sure, because there's no data published on that, so I really can't say.
I mean, how many of these missiles have actually been fired before? Do you know?
Several hundred. I'd need to go look at the number, but several hundred. We fired what, like 400 in Iraq, 450.
And that was of this specific version, or was it the Block 1?
M39A1. Mix of M39 and M39A1. I think we used 2 M39s in the Gulf War, but then like 450 M39s and M39s A1 in
John,
Operation Iraqi Freedom.
people are asking, basically their question is, why is it hard to intercept the ATACM?
Well, because it's maneuvering. That's not, I guess, not necessarily a helpful response. But so essentially, what you're trying to do is when you have an air defense system, you have a surface air missile system. Essentially, what's happening is you have a radar, a fire control radar that's tracking the target, and then based upon that target's position, velocity, as estimated or as measured by the radar, and based upon the kinematic parameters of your surface air missile, what you basically do is that system computes a PIP, predicted intercept point, which is some point in space that if you launch your interceptor, given the current position and velocity of your target, they will meet each other at approximately that location, and then you compute that, and essentially, so in the case of like S300, S400 has an onboard inertial navigation system, so it navigates roughly to that predicted intercept point, and as it gets close, the target gets illuminated by the fire control radar, and then it begins to home in on that reflection with the seeker on the missile, and then from there it begins to actually perform the corrections needed to hit the target as it gets close to that intercept point. With a highly maneuverable ballistic threat, that becomes a problem because the predicted intercept point is constantly changing. So it's actually difficult to be able to get the interceptor to the right place at the right time, or to actually be able to detonate or impact the hit to kill system, that maneuvering ballistic object. It just is much more difficult to have an interceptor that is maneuverable enough and has enough energy to be able to continually maneuver in flight to compensate for the fact that that predicted intercept point is continually changing, it's continually moving. That's a non-trivial challenge. It's something that the US was able to do when designing PAC-3, CRI, and MSC for Patriot. That is an incredibly energetic and incredibly maneuverable interceptor that can do that very easily. Something like 5V55 or 48N6 from S300P or S400 can't really do that all that well. The other issue, especially when you're talking about high altitude intercepts, the air up there, the atmosphere is less dense up there. You get 20, 30 kilometers. And so especially if you're trying to do a high altitude intercept of a ballistic threat, as your interceptor gets up there, it's going to become less maneuverable. And that makes things more problematic. The ballistic missile, especially if it's using aerodynamic control services, that's also true. But at the same time, it's going to have greater airspeed, and so it's going to be experiencing more drag. So potentially, you're going to have some more control authority from its aerodynamic surfaces, or from its relative to what the interceptor has, since it's traveling slower typically. There's ways to overcome that. PAC-3 has attitude control thrusters, so it has excellent maneuverability at all altitudes. But again, that's kind of just a subset of the challenges that you face trying to defeat maneuvering ballistic threats. I mean, it can be done. Patriot does it, incredibly reliably. The Russians can do it to some extent, as I understand it, with S300V, because it has some specific optimization for ballistic threats generally that S300P and S400 lack. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenging threat set, and that's what ATACMS presents. That's the capability it brings to the table.
And Gimlers, they can maneuver too, right?
I think so. I mean, they certainly maneuver in order, in order to correct their trajectory to be able to hit their target precisely. I don't know if they perform evasion maneuvers in flight. I don't know that. It isn't published anywhere. I assume they probably do, but I don't have firm visual or written confirmation of that from any public source.
Yeah. at minimum, there's multiple ways to get to the target, right? You could go really high, you could go a little bit more shallow, you could dive, you could like there's different
so
paths you could take.
okay. So with most long range SAM systems, they'll launch their interceptors ballistically and then have them not necessarily dive. It really depends on where the target's located, its velocity, or excuse me, its altitude and its horizontal distance relative to the launcher. But in many cases, that involves the interceptor diving on the target or basically approaching it like, head on, from the top of that ballistic arc. And so if you look at, there's some in diagrams, I think actually I have some posted somewhere on my Twitter feed like from 6 months ago, like of the actual trajectories that are flown by 5V55 from S300P. I have some diagrams on that from some Soviet testing data. And you'll notice the longer range, the low altitude engagement, it dives at its targets. For the long range, for the medium to long range, kind of medium altitude engagements, it'll get to the top of that ballistic arc and then kind of glide horizontally, then intercept the target. That works great for aerodynamic threats, but for ballistic threats, it's a bit different. So you maximize your engagement range against aerodynamic threats by being able to kind of loft your interceptor, be able to fly that ballistic trajectory to maximize your range. The size of your engagement envelope against ballistic threats, however, it's not determined by how far you can loft your missile. It's determined by how fast the interceptor can get to the predicted intercept point. So that's the reason why, for example, PAC-2 for Patriot, it has a range of against aerodynamic threats of 160 kilometers. In reality, kinematically, it's even larger, but it's limited to 160 kilometers by radar performance. So you can loft it greater than 160 kilometers against an aerodynamic threat. You can only do 120 kilometers. You can only loft a PAC-3 MSC 120 kilometers against an aerodynamic threat. But a PAC-3 MSC has 60 kilometers of range against a ballistic threat, and PAC-2 has less than 20. And the reason why that is PAC-3 MSC can get to that predicted intercept point vastly faster than PAC-2 can, even though you can physically loft PAC-2 further. So that gives you that massive increase in engagement area against ballistic threats at the cost of, not quite a larger footprint against aerodynamic threats, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yep.
John, I have a question. So in the video from Berdyansk, where we hear and somewhat see the impacts, there are 3 different impacts notable in the kind of thunderstorm sound from the bomblets. And we see interceptors fired at all 3 of them. And of course, someone is filming, so they must have known that something is happening. Do you think that the missiles were detected, the Russians trying to intercept them, or?
Oh yeah, the Russians
also,
yeah. I mean they would have seen those dozens of kilometers out. It's probably has an apogee of 30 kilometers, so I had to guess. They're going to see that thing coming from miles away, from an incredibly large distance. Unlike Storm Shadow, where they don't see it till it's like right on top of them. You're going to see ATACMS coming. You just won't have an interceptor kinematically capable of intercepting it in most cases.
Unless you do.
So what I take from this is that they probably launched some sort of interceptor earlier than from the stage the video was filmed, and then they launched smaller interceptors just before it hit. That's just my interpretation of that. Because why would they film?
From the video that I saw, it looked like it was a Buk firing. It didn't really look vertical launched. So that makes me think it was a Buk.
Yeah. So, but the reason why I ask is that I'm just thinking maybe they actually launched S300Vs at these targets. They failed to intercept, and that's why they keep filming, and then we see and hear the impact.
I mean, could be. I don't know if there's an S-300 there defending that site. Russian Telegram said Buk M3 and Tor. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I haven't seen anything specific to indicate that.
Yeah, so the only other kind of interpretation from them starting to film before the impact is that there was another impact before that again, but we don't have any evidence of that. So
Yeah, that is a good question. Why were they filming is always a good question.
yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking that, like, logical explanation. They fired some interceptors earlier, right? A couple of maybe 30 seconds before.
I mean,
this was 2:30 in the morning.
I mean, if they have basic competence, they probably would have seen the missile launch, or well, not launch. They would have seen the missile probably maybe 3 minutes out when it's around apogee, and they would have, like, sounded an alert at the base, like, "Hey, get to shelter. There's a ballistic missile coming, multiple," and had people kind of get to cover. I mean, that would be my thought, is that they saw it at apogee on radar pretty easily, and they had, like, 180 seconds of warning, and they were telling people, "Hey, get to shelter, get on the ground," and that's why there were people outside filming.
Get the shelter. Okay, I'll get my camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain why there's a couple of guys in the bush filming the airport.
Hey, bushes are good protection against high explosive submunitions.
Yeah. I just presumed there was an event, that caught their attention just a few seconds before the video starts.
So here's just a out of the box weird question. What if you shoot Gimlers at the air defense while the ATACMS, like before you shoot the ATACMS?
Well, it depends on what exactly you're trying to hit with ATACMS, because it's more than 180 kilometers away, then you can't do that to begin with.
I think this airfield was in Gimler range.
I don't think it was. I'd looked.
It's just out of Gimler range. Anyways, whatever. I was just trying to think of a reason for people to be awake at 2:30 in the morning.
They could have fired or something like that beforehand.
Yeah, they could have also fired the ground launch small diameter bomb.
I don't think they had those yet, to be honest. In my personal opinion, I don't think they have them yet.
No, but in combination with this missile, they can do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And is there any way to intercept one of those bombs when they're detached from the rocket?
Yeah, like Tor could probably. I mean, yeah, Tor can probably do it, to be honest. I mean, it's a difficult target because how small it is. But I mean, it can be done in principle. There's no reason it can't. If they can intercept Gimlers, I mean, it won't be quite as fast as Gimlers coming in terminal, and it's going to be. So I'll make it a little bit easier. On the other hand, it's smaller, so that makes it harder. So depending on how those two effects interact with each other, I mean, I can't say if it'd be easier, more difficult relative to Gimlers, but I mean, it's, like I said, it's doable in principle if you have a good enough radar capable interceptor, etc. I mean, if there's a system to do it, it will be Tor.
Okay, so there's another story today that came out this evening of from Cryboy about he claims Ukraine crossed the Dnipro River again. I don't believe it at all. I think he's trying to invent a victory for Russia, which is something that he pretty often does. One of the things I find most suspicious about this claim is that Romanov hasn't said anything. And I feel like if anyone crossed the river, Romanov would be there to talk about it. Because it's like his thing, you know? It's like, it would be like if Russia attacked Le Mans, Wargonzo would be there. Because that's like, Wargonzo loves Le Mans. Romanov loves the Dnieper River. Cryboy, I think, is full of shit, personally. But I guess it's possible it could be true. I've not seen any evidence. And I don't know, Ireland, did you hear about this river crossing?
Oh no, I didn't. I asked people. Um, they didn't answer. They didn't even receive the messages, so I don't know. But yeah, I have not seen any evidence that this happened. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean Ukraine didn't do something there. But yeah, I find it highly unlikely that they would launch two ATACMS strikes and not do it in conjunction with the operational area that they're presumably doing a major offensive. That would be very strange.
Yeah, there are a few other things that make this strange. These are the three towns he said that Ukraine is attacking. They're right here. They're actually pretty close to Kherson and the Dachi area that Ukraine already controls. But there are really weird things about, like, why would they cross here when Russia has been freaking out about Ukraine being on these islands near Mykolaiv and what's the name of this town? Ohilvka or whatever it's called. Anyway, they've been freaking out about these towns, and they've been bombing them very regularly with just massive airstrikes on these islands. Um, if they were to cross anywhere, I would imagine they would cross in this area where they've obviously built up a lot of forces already. And by a lot, it's probably like 100 guys, but that's
And we
where
also
I
know
would
that they,
imagine. Yeah.
we also know that they did quite a lot of, operations there. Wouldn't say like incursions. They did several incursions in this area. They annoyed the Russians there a lot already.
Yeah.
But the main reason why I think it's bullshit is really because the two major events of today, which have quite a significant impact, didn't happen in any of the areas that are in conjunction with this part of the operational area for Russia, right? Where would you expect Ukraine to hit an airbase if they were going to do a crossing of the Dnipro? Andrew, like, it wouldn't be the airport of Berdyansk.
No, you'd probably go for a Zhankoi, probably would be the
Yeah.
airbase, probably.
Yeah. I mean, Berdyansk airport is it's okay, but why then do a strike in Luhansk? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, if
I would
you're
expect-
gonna do two, you'd do Berdyansk and Zhankoi. If you wanted to cross the river.
Or some other strategic tactical target closer to the river that isn't an airport. So yeah, that doesn't make sense at all.
There was a report today that where is that? So there was a report today that Ukraine hit Skadovsk, but that doesn't mean much because they hit Skadovsk like all the time. I didn't map it. I forgot to. I do have a video of it. Could probably find it if I didn't save very many videos today.
Also, in a conjunction with a potential river crossing, I would expect a massive amount of other sorts of fires across the Dnipro from Ukraine. Not just the same day as the attack. I would expect it 5 days in conjunction before the attack. I would expect massive amount of fires. I would expect reports of drones flying over these areas. And yeah, okay, you can try and surprise the Russians by not doing it, but then you don't take out the assets you want to take out before you do a river crossing. So that doesn't make sense.
And this is the image from Skadovsk. It doesn't really show much. Ukraine does hit Skadovsk all the time. It used to be a major base. They were in the hotel over here somewhere. They hit the hotel with a storm shadow, and Russia didn't like that very much. The hotel was like on the western side of town. They blew up the hotel with a storm shadow. They relocated their HQ to where was it? Anyway, there's a resort over here. It's like a bunch of like little tiny resort houses that you can rent during the summer. And all the officers live in those little resort houses now instead of the hotel. Which makes it a little bit harder to bomb because now they're all spread out. Maybe you could shoot them with an ATACMS or something. I don't know. But yeah, this crossing the river makes no sense. It screams of trying to invent a victory after a series of, let's be honest, devastating defeats for Russia. And I think they're just trying to get a W. So what I kind of assume happened is that Ukraine probably did just a normal raid of some sort, because they raid all the time, all over the place. And I assume that Russia will post videos of this raid claiming that it was the assault across the river. As per usual, this is kind of their MO at this point, so that they're going to probably post some videos of Ukraine crossing, and maybe even Ukraine will post a video of them crossing, because they've done that before. So it's all going to get blown out of proportion. They're going to claim that like Ukraine captured ground and they're going to hold it for a few days, and then Russia will probably heroically counterattack and take it all back and have a victory. I assume that's what's going to happen, because that's what's happened every other time. Cryboy and Romanov and all the other people have claimed that Ukraine crossed the river, and I imagine, and I already know for a fact that the PSYOP machine is going an overdrive tonight, claiming that it's all true and Ukraine did cross and blah blah blah. I don't believe any of it personally, at least not without evidence, and especially not without Romanov. I can't even imagine a scenario where Ukraine would cross the Dnipro without Romanov there, with his stupid little wearing too many bags of candy on his chest. Anyways, those are the two big stories today. There is another story that I think is big, although it's not really new at this point. It happened a few days ago, but this is the first stream that we've had since then. So there was an absolutely enormous attack on Novomykolivka. This attack is probably one of the largest attacks that we've had from Russia in a long while. A lot of people were claiming that the Avdiivka attack was the huge attack, and it wasn't. I don't know how else to say it. Novomykolivka was the major attack, and you can see it here. I'm going to do some like before and afters. I don't know if the 5th was a good day. Was the 5th a good day? No, maybe the 3rd. 30th? Yeah, 30th is probably good. Okay, so here we can do some flicker back and forth between the 30th and 15th, and you can see the scale of the shelling here. There's a giant crater. I have no clue what this giant crater is. It's absolutely gigantic. It's about 50 to 70 meters across, something like that. Maybe smaller. I'm not sure. It's really hard to measure with this low quality imagery, but it's a giant crater, and we can see that Russia had a very significant tank attack, tank assault, and you can see the line that they took here. And we also have video of this specific attack where they moved up with a few tanks and a bunch of BMPs and MTLBs, and it went very badly. They got up here and basically all of them were destroyed. There was another attack that went down this tree line, and they took very serious casualties as well. I've been mapping these casualties. If I can go here, I can go back and map many days at once, and that should help show the extent of the losses. Maybe map more days. So they had a whole bunch of vehicle losses here and a whole bunch of vehicle losses over here. It's hard to tell exactly how many vehicles they lost because there were prior attacks here, and we don't know exactly precisely which vehicles were from prior attacks and which were from the current attack. But we do have video of both of these major assaults. And this was absolutely enormous in scale. You can see how many vehicles were involved in this. Dozens, probably. It was probably multiple brigades. And they were attacking from at least 3 different vectors. One was coming from the east, one was coming from the south, and the southern attack split to move west. So there are 2 attacks from the south, one directly south, one southwest, and one from the east. And they're all trying to capture this ground south of Novomikhailivka. So that is part of the attack there. Now, why is this important? It is important because of this highway here. This highway goes from Pavlivka to Vuhledar, near this town of Vodiana, to Konstantinivka, up into Marienka, and through this little town of Pobieda. So this is a very important highway because it links 2 incredibly important defensive positions in Vuhledar and Marienka. Russia, their goal, and this goal has been here for a very long time, is to capture Konstantinivka. So obviously, in order to get to Konstantinivka, they have to either go through Novomikhailivka, or go around it, or go to Vodiana, or they need to capture Vuhledar. So those are kind of the only ways that they have, the only options. They've tried many times to get to Vodiana, but they've never been able to get very far. I think around here is roughly the furthest extent they've ever gotten. So that's many kilometers from the intersection of this highway. Vodiana in itself is a incredibly important position for Ukraine. Not so much defensively, but it's where they put a lot of their high value assets. There's a stuff that you can't put on the front line they put there, and you can kind of imagine what sort of things that would be. So they've also tried to capture Novomikhailivka. They've tried moving up the highway from Slavna. They've tried attacking it from the north from Oleksandrivka, and now they are trying to attack it from the south, and probably, honestly, trying to bypass it, because I don't think they actually want the town. They're trying to bypass it to get to the highway. Yep.
Andrew, you remember the BTGs, right? And all
Yes.
the criticism against that sort of tactic that failed so badly last year. And then this year we had this the immersion of this smaller sized tactical, basically company sized elements that Russia had more success with, at least to a certain degree. But now I'm seeing, so from what you're showing, and also what I've seen, the last month, it seems like Russia has completely transitioned back towards maybe not even the BTGs, because I don't think that structure exists anymore, but a lot larger tactical group of assault.
Yeah, they're really trying. It's it depends on who you talk to. It depends on who you talk to, because I've heard arguments that what they're doing now, like these attacks, they consider small. And these are attacks that are involving simultaneously upwards of 50 vehicles, if not 100 plus vehicles, in a simultaneous attack, coming from multiple different angles. That seems rather large to me, to have like 100 vehicles.
That's all tracked vehicles?
Yeah, they have MTLBs, BMPs. We have tanks. BTRs, armored cars, all that sort of thing. All like combat vehicles. Yeah, then not all tracked, because they do have the BTRs and the armored cars. Although Russia doesn't really use that many armored cars. They use mostly MTLBs. But yeah, they do have BTRs too.
Yeah, so that's a brigade-sized attack. And we didn't see that until late summer, I guess, or even start of the autumn. And before that, we had these small counterattacks based on company-sized elements. That was rather successful for the Russians on the defensive side. But yeah, it seems like whatever they try, the lack of coordination between mass fire and just the tactical planning doesn't seem like they managed to do anything spectacular. It's kind of a circle of them trying out different things from what I see, because we never saw the brigade-sized elements trying to attack since really the start of the invasion, did we?
They've tried it in Avdiivka before. This is a still image of a video. I can't show the video because it's actually rather violent. But this is the still by itself is rather serene. So in this still, right here is a BMP-2. This is a T-80BV. I think that is also a T-80BV. Actually, this might be a BVM, and I think that's a BV. This is a BMP. BMP. I think that's a tank. I'm not sure. I think BMP. Not sure what that vehicle is, but it exploded into 5 pieces. And then that's another vehicle back there. That's like 2 pixels. That's another vehicle. There's 2 more vehicles. That's another vehicle. And all these little dotty boo. All these. No, actually. I was gonna say those are infantry, but they're not. I remember now that this field has posts in it. But also there's another vehicle over here, just off camera. It's like if I were to play the video, it would pan right, and you could see another vehicle there. So this is a lot of vehicles all in one spot. And also notice that I think like only 2 of them aren't exploded yet. So that's always a good sign. And this is just one part of the attack. Also,
it's half of a battalion in one frame.
Yeah, and not all of these vehicles are from this attack. Some of them are from a prior attack that was like last year. So, but a lot of these vehicles are from this attack. Like this one, I think this one, I think that one's old. So like these four are new, and I think like this is new, and I think that's new. But not all of them are new, but most of them are. I think like 2/3 of them are new. But this is also just one piece of this attack. You have to keep in mind that they attacked along this tree line, which is what that is. We were just looking at this part right here. They attacked right here, which had a massive number of losses. They also attacked this eastern side, which also had massive losses. And previously, a few weeks ago, they attacked on this eastern side that also had massive losses. So this Novomikhailivka area, they've probably lost around 30 to 40 armored vehicles total over the past, since September 25th. So that's like 3 weeks. From my
Which we know of.
yeah, from what I know, they've been averaging like 7 to 10 assaults per day, of of size, like seven to 10 assaults a day. I would imagine each one is at least a company.
Have you heard any reports of infantry attacks as well?
Not really. In that video, you can see the infantry walking, but I think they're walking because all their vehicles exploded. I don't know of any just infantry attacks. I'm sure they have to be doing them now because all their vehicles exploded. But I've not seen any particular information about just infantry operating by themselves.
And what about airstrikes in the last?
Oh boy, airstrikes. Yes, there have been a
Yeah,
lot of airstrikes, like
last
dozens.
week or 2 weeks before this attack in this area.
Oh, there were so many. Let me just show you all the week. Like I'll show you like the past few weeks of airstrikes because there's so many airstrikes. It's so stupid. like there.
Okay, is that a week or is it a day?
This is from the 29th till now.
Okay. Okay. And these are mostly glide bombs.
Exclusively, and also they've been hitting up here too, which is Pereskovivka, and then they've also been hitting Konstantinivka, and also back here. Yeah, they've been absolutely crushing Novomikhailivka. At this point, I'm not sure there are many structures in Novomikhailivka that exist.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, and
I mean,
they've also been pretty heavily shelling this field here. This field here has also been getting absolutely rocked. Russia has been trying to assault it, and yeah, it's just been. Novomikhailivka is very obviously, like undeniably, their primary objective at the moment.
so what I take from that is that they obviously try to degrade the Ukrainian defenses there over time before massing a very, very large scale attack. But with that attack still failing so miserably, it means that they either don't understand or have the capability to target the right assets, or even being able to target them within the time those targets are actually going to be valid targets, and so forth, not being able to take out those assets that they need to take out before they launch an attack. The other possibility is that Ukraine really has just a massive defense here, and the Russians either underestimates that or is just in no way able to take out enough defenses before they launch their attacks. And
everybody knows how vital this area is. This is, if Ukraine lost this area, like if they lost Konstantinivka, it would be like earth-shatteringly bad. It would be really, really bad. They would be forced to do some sort of major counteroffensive to take it back. This would be really this would actually be probably one of the worst places that Ukraine could lose, because you would I don't want to zoom out here. I'll do it on the other map. You would risk losing Mariinka and Vuhledar, and you'd have Kharkov become like a frontline town. It would this whole corner would be devastated, losing Konstantinivka. It would be really a game-changing event, and it would push Ukraine out of range of a lot of the important logistics to Crimea. It would very significantly strengthen this land bridge to Crimea, and it would protect the new rail line that Russia is currently building, pushing Ukraine even further away from that. So it would be an extremely bad thing to lose this area. It'd be absolutely awful for Ukraine. And this is why Russia so desperately wants to capture it, and why Ukraine knows they have to defend it.
So if Ukraine is smart here, they don't necessarily station a lot of defense in this area, but they station certain kind of troops that know how to make sure that their locations are not stationary, constantly move around, and are able to detect incoming attacks and suppress those to a degree which allows a defense force moving in with the actual, main defense of this area, because you don't want to really station the people that you really depend on for defending this area in a super vulnerable. This is a salient. Russia can target Konstantinivka from every angle except from the west. So you don't want to station all your assets that you need when these kind of big attacks happen. So I just assume from all these airstrikes that Russia didn't manage to degrade the defense, because the people that and the equipment that they needed to defend this area wasn't necessarily there when they struck.
What's interesting is all of the airstrikes, like literally all of them, were on the town and not on these defenses, which is I just find it interesting. But
I expect Ukraine must have been smart here in the defense of this area. It's a really difficult area to defend.
So this area south of Novomykolaivka, the southeast, this also has a giant crater that I can't explain. I have no clue what this crater is. The best theory that I've seen was that it was a kamikaze tank that exploded, and I don't know if that's true, but that's like the best explanation that I've heard anyone come up with. I really do not think this is a bomb or a missile. I think it's too big. And I honestly think it's too big for a tank exploding too, to be honest. But
is there a chance that one of those Soviet era Mikliks were taken out?
That's possible. That is possible. It would be two of them. There's two giant craters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What kind of vehicle can carry that amount of explosives?
These are giant craters. They're so big.
But they don't have the form, the shape of a Miklik charge. So.
Oh no! It's definitely not a charge. It would, if anything, it would be the vehicle detonating with the charge in it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean,
But even that, I do happen to have an image of exactly that happening somewhere.
what's the name again of the Russian Miklik?
UR-77.
Yeah.
We do have an image. Okay, here it is. This is an image of a Miklik actually exploding, and you can see that it is nowhere remotely as big. Like even a Miklik, I don't think. Like this is such a giant bomb. Like I don't think people realize how big this crater is. This is an entire Miklik exploding. I can even show you the video. I mean, it's not the vehicle exploding, but it is the entire charge exploding. So here, let's watch this. This is actually pretty cool. I'm gonna speed it up because it's kind of slow. Okay, so the Miklik, a UR-77, what's it called, a meteor or whatever. So it fired its charge out, and we're gonna see a really big explosion. And I want you to keep in mind that this explosion is nowhere remotely as big as the other one. Right, so that is it exploding. And
But that is obviously a failed deployment
it sure
of the
is.
UR-77.
It sure is. That's why I mean, like this was not like normally they're supposed to like clear a line. This whole rope like landed in one spot and exploded all in one place. So and this crater is nowhere close to the other one. Like the other crater is like this big.
Okay, John, you're the physicist there. What can cause that kind of explosion?
Sorry, I'm not watching the stream. What?
What can make a 50-meter wide crater?
A 50-meter long assembly of explosives.
Oh,
But it's more like diameter.
yeah,
It's
diameter.
not
50 meter diameter.
50-meter width at 25 meters on either side. You would need a couple hundred kilos along each point, basically. It'd be a fairly massive amount of explosives, but yeah.
So it's just a big old crater. That's all I can say. I can't explain it other than that. But
Like the only thing that reminds me of is the Oklahoma City bombing.
yeah.
But seriously,
Yeah,
like that's the size of it.
That may have been. Oh, it's not even. It's just a crater. Why?
Yeah,
Why do you think was?
That's what I say. That's what I said. What makes a 50-meter wide crater is what I said.
Yeah, but
maybe I missed
very
like a 50-meter long crater or something like that.
It's just a giant crater.
But to be precise, it's not 50 meters of an explosion impact. It's the concentration of the explosion itself is 50 meters or more, and then around that area you have a very large area of impact. Like it's maybe 150 meters that got devastated.
That's like a 2,000-pound or a 3,000-pound bomb. Yeah.
It's a absolutely gigantic explosion. Like
it's not just the black part itself that got affected there. It's a lot more.
Yeah. So like these holes, like these are like what you generally see from like a 500 kilogram bomb, or like those big is like this big, and that's just it's so much bigger. It's so big. I have no clue what it was. There are two of them. One is round, and the other one is kind of oval, which is interesting. But that's all I can say.
Non-circular craters. I mean, I would associate non-circular craters with very large secondary explosions, but I don't know if that's necessarily correct.
I don't know.
But why you would
CJ
have secondary Yeah, but this is a secondary explosion in the middle of a field in a contested area. It's not like a, behind the trench line, is it? Is it behind the trench line or is it in the middle of the battlefield, Andrew?
It's just in the middle of a field. You can see this field in that video. Here, I'll show you this field. The video does not have the giant crater, unfortunately. Okay, let's. I'm gonna try to find a part of this video that isn't too graphic, and I'll show you. Okay, so the explosion is like, it's like where the 12 is right here. It's like right here. So you see, it's just a field. That crater is like roughly like right here. It's like just off camera, although the crater's not in the video. Yeah. So
these are the stories we would like to hear from someone that participated in this battle and would really like to know what the hell happened, but we're probably never gonna know, it's a mystery.
I wonder if we'll ever, maybe the video will just come out eventually. That's why I keep hoping for. I keep hoping that a video will come out with the crater in it so I can see exactly what it looks like. But anyways, so that's all what happened south of Novomykolaivka. Now we can get to what happened in Avdiivka, which is, I think, different than what the narrative has been, the public narrative, because we should show you just how different it looks in Avdiivka as soon as it feels like loading. Just keep in mind what we were just looking at, the amount of destruction, the amount of shelling, the giant craters. There was MRL strikes, like from Smerch or whatever it was, and they're bigger than grads. I don't know what they were, but there were airstrikes, there were tanks exploding. So just keep all that in mind as we look at here, and notice how Avdiivka doesn't have any of that. Doesn't have anything like that. So this is the difference between the 30th and the 15th. And notice that the 15th is after the main assault. So there's not, it's just, this tree line was destroyed. This tree line was damaged. There's a little bit of shelling here. But this was, we're looking right now, this was one of the primary assaults of Russia. Okay, like this is not a minor. This is where, like, the videos of all those vehicles exploding was right here. So over here towards Pervomaiska, there is more shelling that you can look at. It's not terribly much more. You can see larger craters, etc., kind of showing up. Probably MRL. There's some shelling over here. But it's nowhere remotely close to what we saw in Novomykolaivka. Not even like a little bit close. Like this is, what we saw in Novomykolaivka is what I would call heavy shelling. And here is what I would call moderate at best shelling. Now there was another assault south of, this was a very significant assault south of Pervomaiska. And we can see some moderate shelling. I can actually show you, today I went through and mapped some of the losses here, and I can show you what some of this looks like, because this was a significant attack south of Pervomaiska. So they lost 3 BMPs here. They lost 3 more over here, and that's a minimum. So they lost 6 BMPs here. It was a rather large assault. They unloaded their infantry, tried running up and attacking the town in various places under pretty heavy artillery fire that was all focused in this part of the town, mostly grads, but also other sorts of artillery. And simultaneously, they did an assault towards the southern part of, from the southeast. So this was a multi angle attack. So they're attacking from the south, they're attacking from the southeast, and simultaneously, they also attacked in the north in Vodiana, where we also had multiple tanks lost to a minefield. And keep in mind that they're also attacking north out of Vodiana in those areas that we were just talking about. So all of these, this was a significant attack, but with nowhere near the artillery support. So what do you make of it that they pushed these large attacks without seemingly very much artillery support helping them move up? There was artillery deeper behind the town. It seemed that they're kind of shooting the goal, but not the pathway there. And also, what do you make of that apparently Ukraine didn't necessarily have the artillery to... obviously, they had enough to stop the attack, but they didn't really shoot that much altogether. Do you think the attack was just ended quickly, or I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it depends on recon and the intel you have of the area of operations. Like, well, at least it should. Like, why do you fire on a wood line? I know that the Russians do it to cut down trees, Andrew, but normally you engage fire missions because there is something you want to...
Well, the reason you shoot the tree line is because there's a trench under the trees. It's usually why.
Well, yeah, some of the time it seems that they do take the trees out because they don't want the Ukrainians to have the cover of the trees as well. But in this particular event, I guess they didn't have any targets, you know? Why do you want to shoot at some place where there's no target?
Why do you have any idea why these two assaults look so different looking at them through the satellite view? They're so incredibly different. And in what happened?
So we don't have the imagery of what is actually happening on the battlefield, right? We try and interpret these things from satellite imagery and some clips of drone imagery, or maybe information that we hear from people that are on the ground. That's the general thing we do when we look at these things. And the picture of what is actually happening there is probably very different sometimes. And here is one of those cases where I just guess that the Russians didn't have any targets, so they didn't engage in fire in that area. And even though it's, you know, in the vicinity of a similar attack, which they had a total different approach, it doesn't mean that the threat assessment of the Russians or the Ukrainians were the same. It means that it was probably different. They had different challenges. So that's my interpretation of it. Even if it's in the same area of operations, they could have completely different targets.
Well, at the end of the day, this attack south of Pervomaisky was a total failure. They accomplished nothing. The attack north out of Vodiana was also a failure. The attack northeast out of Vodiana was also a failure. The attack northwest out of Vodiana, they appear to have captured some minor ground here. So I'm not sure if they have actually captured it. I have it as a gray area, personally. But they may have captured some minor ground here. So this whole southern attack, including Nova Nikolaevka, was a total failure, from what I can tell. They may have taken one tree line at the cost of, I don't know, 50 vehicles. And basically they lost a battalion to capture one tree line. Maybe even more than a battalion, to be honest. Maybe 2 battalions.
The only kind of improvement I see from the Russians is that they seem to go after certain things more methodically. You know, do you understand what I mean, Andrew? Like,
No.
at a certain
Kind of.
time, no, okay. Like, even if it's not a good target, it seems like they're hammering certain things for the artillery, which they believe is going to give them some advantage. And a year ago, at this time, they were just sending artillery everywhere without any concentration on fire.
Yeah. And about the craters aren't water. They're not water, trust me, because it's flat ground. It's not like that. I'm like, there might be water in the craters, but water didn't make the crater.
Andrew,
Now, I think that's all right.
do you happen to know what species of tree most of the tree lines are? Like, I know here in Alberta, for instance, when most of the tree lines were built, when they were first clearing land, they all ended up, the government gave out poplar trees, and a lot of the tree lines all happened to be that species of tree. And I wondered if you happen to know what species of tree most of the tree lines are.
I have no idea.
Because this is like tangential, but you mentioned that there would be trenches through the tree lines, and I don't know if any of you have ever tried to dig through tree roots to make trench lines or anything else for that matter. But that's like the most not fun I can imagine, legitimately. That would suck more than a lot of things.
The answer is a chainsaw normally to that, but yeah, it really sucks. But you know,
But even a chainsaw, it gets all gummed up with dirt, and then you're trying to clean out your chain, and then you're trying to like sharpen it, and like it's a shit show. There's nothing good about that.
yeah, you're right. But that's kind of how, like, so when you want to create a trench, you don't necessarily have the luxury of deciding if you can go around or avoid digging where there is a root of the system or not. So chainsaw is normally the answer, and you just throw away the chain. To be honest, that's you're not trying to preserve chains. That's, you know.
I'm just appreciating how much work and pain in the ass that would be to build a trench, and that sucks.
It really sucks, and I didn't even do a lot in training. I don't want to even think about these guys. It's a lot of work, and the Russians have done a lot of them, like insane amounts. So we made so much fun of the Russians not doing defensive lines, not doing defensive positions, and not doing it the right way. But they've done a lot of really, really complicated defensive positions in really difficult places, and almost all of them have been in vicinity or under these tree lines. So yeah.
Yeah, for however much it sucks to dig the trench, it is really nice to be under the trees. So I guess that's what you look forward to at the end.
They might have some tooling though, Exit, like very special tooling and machinery.
So
I mean, there are definitely like trench diggers is what we call them, and you put them on like the front of a bobcat or something. But I am imagining that getting that through a war zone to go dig a trench is not really something that's going to be extra easy.
they
but
do
any-
they do have excavator trucks. They're like Urals with the excavator on the back that does this sort of stuff. So that their engineering people have access to that. Like the average grunt doesn't, obviously, but the engineers do. And oh, I just realized I don't have a lower third. Okay, so if you'd like to view the map, the link is in the lower third, and you can go there and you can look at it, and you can click on the dots. The dots have sources and images, and you can watch the videos if you'd like to.
But Exit, as you know, probably there are a lot of benefits of having a trench or somewhere a hideout next to a tree line. One of them is how do you say this in English? How do you drainage?
Drainage.
drainage.
To get the water away. Because
Yeah.
naturally the tree lines elevate, and that's just a huge benefit for a trench line to be able to get the water out of the trench.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And like I understand the value of it. It just hadn't ever occurred to me before when we've done this stream that that is the reality of what they would be doing. And I've done that and it's not fun. And it put a whole new perspective on it for me. So I was thankful for that little tidbit. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah,
in general, like the shovels have like an axe on it as well. Of course, like the bigger roots, you wouldn't be able to dig through those with that, but that's kind of the reason why it has an axe blade on one of the sides of the trench spade.
It's unfortunate Constantine isn't here because he has a lot to say about learning how to dig trenches. But the short of it is that in the Soviet people, like in Soviet school, like high school, from what I understand, they taught boys how to dig trenches as like part of their schooling. So like everybody knows how to dig a trench, and they all like just do it, and that's like part of an advantage that Russia has right now is that they can just call on like random people and just like dig a trench, and they know how to do it. So it's too bad Constantine's not here, but he's busy. Anyways, moving on to the north of Avdiivka. So the north of Avdiivka was also pretty much a failure, at least to this point, for Russia. Now, I do want to show the satellite view of this because it's interesting, and it more or less shows the extent of what actually happened, which is very different from the Russian narrative, which they've walked back and admitted that they're lying, basically. So as this very painfully slowly loads, here we can see it's still loading, but basically the shelling was along this front tree line and along the eastern side of the tree line along the railway. So it's basically all here is where the fighting was, which we kind of knew already. This spot right here is where there was a pretty famous video that came out on the first day of this assault of multiple tanks being destroyed, and that's roughly, I believe, this this white mark is basically all those tanks getting destroyed. Now, this is not loading very well, but basically what Russia did is they attacked along this road, and then they got to this tree line, and then they moved on through this field, and they attacked the whole length of this row of trees here, including whatever this is. I still don't know what that is, but they basically attacked this whole front here, which was a minefield, by the way, and they were repelled and basically pulled out. Whoever survived anyway. So they took pretty significant casualties in this attack. You can see all of these blue marks are destroyed vehicles. They lost actually a lot of vehicles here. Probably at least a dozen, if not multiple dozen. You can just see all the vehicles marked. Each of these is a destroyed vehicle, except for the two red markers. So they've also tried to attack this waste heap here, which was again a failure. There was another video came out today of an assault on this waste heap. You can see some of the shelling going on. This is what Russia was going up against. This honestly looks like a castle. It has like these tall walls around kind of an inner courtyard of lower ground. It's kind of interesting. I don't understand what Russia was trying to accomplish in attacking this, to be honest. And they failed. So I don't know. The long story short is that as of now, all of the attacks around Avdiivka have failed. Ukraine has launched counterattacks. They've taken back some ground, most notably this ground south of Sevierna, and they've also pushed Russia out of some of this ground west of Krasnohorivka. So that's kind of that. There is an ongoing threat in Avdiivka. There is the constant threat that Russia could throw more reserves in and continue their assault all the way around the town. There is the continuing threat that they could attack Novomykolivka again or continue trying to bypass it. But all of these threats, as of now, have not really materialized in any sort of Russian victory. And here, it loaded. So this is the changes that we can see on the satellite. It's not particularly huge amounts of much, and you can tell that there's literally nothing on the western side of the rail. Literally nothing happened on the western side. So there is kind of one more place that I kind of want to talk about, and this is south of Bakhmut. We see that Ukraine is moving east, south of Bakhmut. They are getting closer to Otradivka. You can't say that they're currently attacking it or anything, but they are getting closer. Now, the full extent of what Ukraine controls, I'm not entirely sure. They could control all the way out to roughly here where my mouse is, or they might just control over here. But the short of it is this whole yellow area is getting actively shelled, and here it is loaded, and we can see kind of the extent of the shelling. You can see they're shelling here and all along here, And when I flick back and forth, you can see it quite easily. They're shelling here. Now, whose shelling is this? I don't know. I don't know if it's Ukrainian or Russian. It's hard to tell. But one thing that we can easily see is that over the past few weeks, the shelling has gone from just west of the train tracks to the train tracks, and now it's east of the train tracks. And the shelling appears to be following roughly the front line. So if we were to make that assumption that it is in fact following the front line and is not for some reason divorced from the front line, then we would have to assume that the front line is somewhere over to the east of the track by several hundred meters. And again, various Russian sources have claimed that Ukraine has pushed beyond the tracks by several hundred meters. It all lines up with what we're seeing on the satellite imagery, and from some of the Ukrainian reports as well that claim that they have also moved several hundred meters east of the railway. So how established they are, whether they truly control it or if it's all a giant contested area, I'm not sure. And the same is generally true north of Zelenopilia. So yeah, that's the area south of Bakhmut. I don't know if any of you have any comments about the south of Bakhmut.
Well, it looks like Ukraine is trying to push for the next highway.
Yeah, they sure
eventually.
are. They sure are.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember a few weeks ago I commented on I believed that Ukraine would use this low waterland, low marshy watery area to cross, and that appears to be exactly what they've done. And I think they will have to clear out enough space on the other side of this river to build a solid foothold there, and then they will expand their operations. I think that's basically what's going to have to happen. It's common sense. It's not really, it's just what you do. It's just going by the book, really. Now I am very surprised Kurdyumivka hasn't fallen yet, but I think it will very soon.
I mean, they're still pushing mainly with infantry. Am I correct?
Yes, mostly. I mean, they do have armor and stuff. I do think they're doing mostly infantry though, just because it's so hard to use armor. Like armor is a limited role item now.
Yeah.
You have to
Well-
prepare the battlefield for your armor. So
Yeah, and I think that's probably what they're doing as well, because you don't want your armor to be bogged down in these fields. But when you get to the roads, and if you can approach this highway going north-south and some of the junctions as well, then if you have a presence near at least two of the junctions there, then your armor is actually a lot more valuable.
I will note that Otradivka is incredibly defended. This is like Russia's main defensive point here. There are trenches along the highway and trenches on either side of the highway. So there is a multi-layer trench system around Otradivka. And I believe the trench basically goes from kind of this intersection down to like that intersection. So it's like this stretch of highway here. Now, Opitna is obviously incredibly important to Russia, and they are going to defend it. I can guarantee it. Also keep in mind that Opitna, Ukraine left Opitna because there was nothing left to fight over, which is interesting. It's kind of what does Russia do? Like, does Russia defend the ruins that Ukraine determined were indefensible? or do they just abandon it, or do they build defenses in front of those ruins? Like, I don't know, like, because you usually say that it's easier to defend a ruined city, right? But how ruined does it have to be before it's not worth it?
But my interpretation of this whole area of operations surrounding Bakhmut is not necessarily the objective of immediately retaking Bakhmut, but to pressure Russia into, taking even more risks and losing even more material and personnel to defend something that is absolutely worthless at this point. The value Ukraine gains here isn't the city; it's the the willpower of the Russians to defend and throw anything and anyone at those defenses for no apparent good reason. So it's basically the same reason why Ukraine defended Bakhmut for so long.
Well, I think, and I don't agree with the assessment, but I think Ukraine is going for Epitna. I don't think they should go for Epitna. I've stated, like, repeatedly, I think they should go for Kodema. But I think they're going for Epitna. I think Epitna is their goal. So, I don't know. And everything they're doing is kind of getting closer to Epitna, like, every day.
I mean, we'll see when they reach the highway which direction they go, right?
Yeah. I mean, they don't even have to they just get to this road right here. Get to this road and just start going to Epitna. I think they view Opitna as a PR victory, which I get very uncomfortable and upset when someone says PR victory. I don't think PR should be the thing you're going for, but I think they view it as a PR victory. The reason I think Ukraine should go for Kodema is that Kodema is very difficult to defend on the west, but very easy to defend on the east. It's a town that is it's basically shaped to defend attacks from the east. I'll show you, and it's just a natural defensive point. See this town, it has these hills that face like east, like southeast, and I think you can. This was the anchor to the south of Bakhmut until they lost it. They lost it due to extreme shelling. They were basically, Ukraine was taking too many casualties from artillery, and they had to get out of there. I think getting this back could become an anchor for the south of Bakhmut again, because it allows you to defend this whole southern portion, and Zaitseva is pretty similar in that it controls these. Basically, this whole area on the other side of the highway, the shape of it, because it is all basically gradually going downhill as you go east. The shape of it, of the terrain, is naturally defends from attacks from the east. So I think if you were to establish the foothold down here without having to attack Bakhmut itself, you could really cripple the value of Bakhmut to Russia just by taking these towns in the south without ever having to go near Bakhmut itself. That's my opinion, and I think that was Ukraine's defensive strategy, but it didn't work for the simple reason that Russia had like infinite artillery, and that they just kept shelling them and shelling them and shelling them, and they just had to leave after a while. It's unfortunate because if Ukraine had HIMARS back then, it may have been a very different story. If they had cluster munitions back then, it may have been very different. If even they had FPV drones back then, it may have been different. You have to keep in mind that Ukraine's ability has dramatically increased from when these battles took place, and Russia's combat ability has dramatically decreased. The balance of power is very different now. But these areas, this was, it wasn't the peak of Russian artillery. That would have been like Popasna, but this was right near the peak. This was like Russia was really firing a lot of artillery, like astronomical numbers of shells per day, and a lot of it were grads. So yeah. And there's kind of one more point to make. Do you want to say something?
No, I'll ask John something when you're done.
Oh, you can ask him now.
Well, so John, this was the ATACMS day, and we kind of had a hunch that Ukraine wasn't going to get very large amount of missiles at the beginning. But you stated earlier in the stream that you would have liked Ukraine to have, I think you said a couple of hundred. What kind of assets would you have liked Ukraine to pursue? Let's say that they had 200 more or less, and yeah.
So in a perfect world, we would have delivered 100 to 200 immediately, and nothing would have ever leaked for 2 weeks before the deliveries occurred. And the Russians would have ideally been completely in the dark and not had any opportunity to disperse aircraft, fixed or rotary wing. And they would have targeted all 4 airfields in Crimea and the various heliports, both in Crimea and in other parts of occupied Ukraine. So it'd be honestly the best case scenario, in my opinion. Maybe they can whack some of those Onyx launchers while they're at it. Maybe a couple S-400s, other high tier air defense assets, and then I'm sure there's some other dispersed area targets that they, that are fairly mobile and time sensitive that they could come up with sustainment and, depots, that kind of thing, and prosecute those. But the big thing, in my opinion, at least, was those airfields in Crimea. I mean, us telegraphing for 2 to 3 weeks beforehand that we were going to deliver them, I think that we probably shot them in the foot, metaphorically and probably literally too, in terms of their ability to leverage that. Again, not that we gave them enough to leverage it to begin with, and we obviously, if we did give them some number of M39A1s, we obviously didn't give them enough.
So you mainly focus on fixed wing and helicopter assets.
Yeah, and then I'm sure again there's some unique targets like the Onyx. I'm sure they'd like to get rid of those. Just kind of nip that problem in the bud permanently. Don't have to deal with that crap in Odessa. And then I'm sure there's like sustainment infrastructure and things they can target.
What about air defense assets?
I mean, I think that might be a priority in some areas of the front where they want some additional, or they want to make the environment more permissive prior to operations, but I don't think that would be necessarily a campaign in and of itself. I think that would be paired to more so operational and tactical maneuver.
So, for instance, in a situation where Ukraine already have F-16 air wings, operational.
Potentially,
Would
or you know,
a
some
target?
other aircraft.
Yeah, like for me, targeting would change immediately if Ukraine had some sort of capability like that.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the whole one too. Is that ideally they, you know, can take out some of those air defense assets to create that additional freedom of maneuver. But you still have to contend with the Russian Air Force, and a great way to do that is by bombing their airfields.
What is the
You
range
get-
of those fighters?
I mean, they can still sortie from air bases of Russia, obviously. They'll just have less time on station, and that'll force more aircraft to operate in airfields from Russia. They'll have to move around sustainment capacity. It'll just be inconvenient for them and, you know, kind of reduce their readiness and availability.
Could we shoot drones at them too?
At the airfields in Russia?
Yeah, just drone them.
I mean, why not?
Like drones. Anyways,
Yeah, I think we're all aware. We're all well aware of that by now.
they're fun. They're like just they fly
A
around and blow
drone-
things up.
A drone is just a poor man's cruise missile.
Cruise missile is just spending too much money on a drone.
You know, you're sounding a little bit like a certain Twitter commentator who shall remain unnamed.
So, John, what if you had 300 bomblets in a poor man's cruise missile?
Yeah, just yeah. That's why. Why can't we do that?
Listen, you're not fitting 300. I mean,
Well, maybe not 300, maybe 20.
let's say if you have 300 APAM
Size bomblets. That's 200. That's 500 pounds. I mean, the size of the thing that you need to transport that a meaningful distance. It's already a cruise missile, just size wise.
But you could fit like 20. That's like the mortar round.
Okay, so there's actually a concept like this. I don't really care for it. I think it's useless. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. It's only the reason I remember it is because that moron Drummond, while he was still before KMW sacked him, or he got laid off or quit or whatever. When he was trying to sell one of their things on Twitter, and it was this tiny 500-kilometer range mini cruise missile with like a 25 to 50 kilogram payload. And I think that's exactly what you're thinking of. I don't think it's a useful idea if you have access to better things. But I guess if for some reason.
It depends entirely on price.
Yeah.
And how many you can make them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like,
I can see there being some use case for it, but it's just so niche. It's like, I guess my perspective is a little bit skewed. I mean, because when I'm looking at it, you know, when I first saw that, I was thinking, you know, from the operational perspective of the United States, this does nothing for us. This is like completely useless. I mean, maybe for Ukraine, it would be useful in certain scenarios. It's cheap. You can use it for, you know, small point targets. But yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the idea. I mean, I think that if Ukraine had if they had the capacity, they would rather have actual cruise missiles rather than the UAVs, and I think that says something.
Because so it's kind of like a joke, but at the same time serious. Like one of the things that I think has been the deficiencies of some of these drone attacks is that the payload is small anyways. And when you have a relatively small payload on a concentrated area, then you're going to be very lucky to take out very important assets.
I'd say very precise.
Yeah. But also because you don't have the intelligence necessarily updated when you send off the drones.
Honestly,
which is another problem.
If you're going to make that sort of drone, I wouldn't use it for that sort of strike. I would use it on like infantry, basically. I would just use them to assassinate infantry.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing, is that if you're willing to if you kind of bring it down, if you're kind of looking at the level of capability that you want and the level that you want to apply and leverage it at, if you bring it down from say the strategic, then to the operational, and then the tactical level, and you really what that I guess from a design standpoint, what that translates to is really bringing down the range. Then you can really substantially cut cost, cut size, cut production effort per unit, and really get something small, cheap that you can make a lot of. And that's great. I mean, at the tactical level, potentially. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm not in terms of like FPVs, for example. I'm a fence sitter on them. I think the idea has some merit. I just think that it's not nearly as much merit as some people think once you start factoring in kind of EW based counter UAS, the cost to actually be able to get them to operate, or the modifications that are going to need to be done to get them to operate in that kind of environment. It's going to drive the unit cost way up. It's not going to be this cheap thing anymore. But like capabilities like Switchblade 600, Lancet, things like that, if done properly, that you can have a lot of, they kind of fill this niche that's, longer range than ATGMs that are fairly inexpensive, that you can kind of really leverage at that tactical level. I think that's a really good use of UAVs, personally.
I think with the really cheap drones, I don't think you need to harden them against electronic warfare. I think you just need to have a sufficient number of the higher quality drones to take out the electronic warfare so you can use your cheaper drones. Or other sorts of weapons like anti-aircraft to take out wherever the EW is. You need weapons to take out the EW.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that if you have a competent and well-equipped opponent, all those things are going to be layered. So let's say you have, a couple. At this point, let's call them what they are: loitering munitions. Let's say you have loitering munitions that can operate in an electronically denied environment, and you either have operator in the loop guidance, or you have some sort of autonomous, like say passive radio frequency homing, basically like literally the classic loitering munition, an anti-radiation loitering munition. That may enable you to take out those emitters that provide that electronic counter UAS effect. But again, with a well-equipped, competent opponent, that those electronic effectors, they're going to be layered with kinetic and directed energy effectors. So you're going to have like your laser systems, microwave-based systems, your gun-based systems, your missile-based systems. They're all going to be protecting each other. And so it's not just enough to say that, well, we're going to have a couple of these, a smaller number of these loitering munitions that can operate in this electronic environment. They can take out these emitters and then make the environment permissive for our low cost stuff. Well, now you're those high cost loitering munitions have to also get through these kinetic and potentially directed energy countermeasures as well. And that's not trivial. You're going to have to, be able to put up a substantial volume of those higher end loitering munitions to be able to do that. And then at some point, basically the cost, the balance of the cost of it kind of shifts in favor of, instead of having this high-low solution cost-wise, just only buy the higher end ones, and then just be able to operate in that environment, so you aren't having to try and run this gauntlet necessarily of all these counter UAS effectors, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I'm just not sure it's true. It is like on paper, sure. I'm just not sure if it works that way in the reality. Because it's just real life is just dirty, and things just don't work right sometimes, and you can find gaps and holes and exploit it. So I don't know. Um, but anyways, there's one last area of the news that I wanted to talk about. I don't really have much to say, so it's going to be really fast. Russia is launching more attacks and around the Kupiansk area. They've been attacking in the Liman-Pershi, Sinkivka area, where there's been shelling closer to Liman-Pershi. We don't know if it was Russian or Ukrainian shelling. Everybody assumed it was Russian. Maybe it was. It was also incendiaries. There was a theory that the incendiaries could be an attempt to clear anti-personnel mines, potentially. I don't know if that's true, but it's one theory. They've also been attacking Ivanivka, probably, well, maybe around here. There was an interesting thing around Orlanka that I kind of want to show you because it's funny. There was a Miklik firing very close to Orlanka, and it makes you wonder, is Russia clearing their own minefield with a Miklik? Which is kind of a weird thing to do. Why not just clear with engineers or something? But anyways, and they've also been attacking south of Novosibirsk towards Stomahivka and also towards Nadia. So those are all the major attacks in the north. These attacks in the north are kind of strong, but I have no details really on the actual fighting. So that covers all the news in Ukraine. Oh, by the way, in Izium, a farmer stepped on a mine, and I believe he lost his leg in Izium, and another farmer crashed into a mine on his tractor, and he was also killed. So in the Izium area around Kharkiv Oblast, there have been a number of people being maimed and killed by mines over the past few days. I think they're averaging about one per day, unfortunately. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that's all the news. Oh, and there were attacks on Odessa. I don't know, Exed, do you want to talk about Odessa? I don't know if Exed's still here. She may have left. Yeah, she left. Anyway, there was an attack on Odessa.
Sorry, so she texted me to tell y'all that she left. I couldn't get to the mic in time.
Yeah, it's okay. Because I know she has a meeting that she has to go to. Or whatever. Anyways, so that's all the news I got. So that's that. Thank you for everyone who came and listened. I hope you found it valuable. And thank you to John and Ireland for coming and chatting with us. And
Sure.
I'm gonna stop the stream. I actually don't know how to stop the stream because about 30 seconds into the stream, YouTube crashed and the stop stream button isn't there anymore. So I don't actually know how to stop the stream. Okay, I'm just gonna.
So we're gonna be here. We're just gonna stay here.
I'm gonna just stop the streaming software and see if YouTube gets a hint.